Good morning. You're watching All You Need to Know on BloombergQuint Live, and I'm Alex Matthew. First, the headlines. An anonymous whistleblower letter has accused Infosys CEO Salil Parekh of unethical practices to boost the company's short-term financial performance. HDFC Bank meets analyst estimates in the second quarter, even as asset quality in its non-banking arm, HDB Financial, deteriorates on a sequential basis. Reliance Industries' second quarter performance meets estimates as well. The refining arm disappoints. Petchem and consumer-facing businesses perform well, though. 5 Nifty companies, Asian Paints, Axis Bank, Kotak Mahindra Bank, Bajaj Finance and Bajaj Finserv, will be reporting their numbers today. And exit polls predict a big win for the Bharatiya Janata Party in the Maharashtra and Haryana assembly polls, even as voter turnout dips compared to 2014. Now, Monday's session on Wall Street saw markets ending in the green. Rising optimism on a trade resolution between the US and China, along with strong corporate earnings, led the risk sentiment to turn positive. The Dow Jones underperformed, led by a third straight day of declines in Boeing. Ranita Young of Bloomberg News wraps up Monday's US market action in this report.
U.S. markets ended higher on Monday, and the S&P 500 closed above 3,000 for the first time since September 19th, all as investors are a little bit more positive about the U.S.-China trade situation and that negotiations are going along smoothly in their view. Investors are also awaiting the latest batch of corporate earnings results, which have been relatively positive in the last couple of weeks or so. During the session, Apple rallied to a record after Raymond James extended its price target higher to a street high $280 on optimism about its iPhone 11. During the session, we also saw Boeing falling amid the MAX 737 airliner situation, and earnings that will come this week include TD Ameritrade and Fifth Third Bank. Meanwhile, during the session, we saw Treasuries, the Bloomberg Dollar Spot Index, and WTI crude oil all close lower. And that's a look at your Wall Street action on Monday. In New York, I'm Ranita Young for Bloomberg News.
All right, let's also close the loop and take a look at the Asia-Pacific region and the markets therein. Rosalind Chin is joining us live from the Hong Kong studios. Good morning, Rosalind. How are we looking today? Japan is shut, of course.
You're right, yes, Japan is shut. That is for a very rare occasion. It's the enthroning of the emperor, which is going to take place this afternoon in Tokyo. And it's basically the first such ceremony in 30 years. So pretty big deal, something that many people may only see once in their lifetimes, if at all. So this is why the markets are closed in Japan. Elsewhere, though, around the region, things are looking pretty positive right now. We've got the MSCI Asia Pacific ex-Japan index making gains of 0.5%. Of course, we've got the Kospi up by about more than 1%. Hang Seng out of the gate up by 0.25%. Both Shanghai Composite and the CSI 300 also making gains in China. That's largely on this trade optimism that we have been seeing. We've had President Trump saying that there's been indications with the negotiations over China. Those are progressing, and he did say that China has started buying U.S. agricultural products. So a little bit more happening in terms of going forwards on that trade front. Apple, of course, we saw tech stocks, as was mentioned, rallying to a record. That's on optimism relating to the upcoming 5G version of the iPhone. That, of course, is giving Asian tech stocks a little bit of a boost here in the region as well, a little bit more hopeful for the semiconductor industry as well. Investors generally are looking ahead to earnings. Apple's earnings aren't out until the end of the month, but earnings are what will give an indication of whether corporates are weathering this global downturn, the trade tensions as well. So these are going to be what is likely to be moving the markets this week. So let's take a look at the Kospi now. I've mentioned the Kospi already, I'm sorry. The S&P ASX 200, that is making gains of nearly 0.3%, up by 0.28 just about at the moment in time. We've got some of the big resources companies, Whitehaven, Pilbara, also Saracen Mining, South 32 among the big movers there. And finally, Hong Kong, we've got the chief executive away in Japan attending that enthroning event. So we've got the chief secretary speaking recently, and they were saying that they're watching the situation in Hong Kong and saying that they are going to announce more measures to help firms, and there will be more measures announced today. So something that they are constantly issuing little bits of policy to help some of the businesses which may be suffering as Hong Kong looks like it's headed for a recession in the third quarter. Back to you.
Thanks so much for that, Rosalind. Now, let's talk a little bit more about one of the points that Rosalind mentions, which is the trade talks between the U.S. and China. U.S. President Donald Trump is stoking trade optimism, saying that an agreement with China could be signed at the APAC summit in Chile next month. Derek Wallbank of Bloomberg News brings you the latest.
And it's happy talk time again, right? There are positive signs coming out of the White House that there could be a preliminary deal signed at the APEC meetings later this year between Trump and Xi. This is a suspected meeting that should happen. Now, here's the thing, though. We've talked about this before. I want to remind the audience, this is not like what Wilbur Ross called the meat of the issues between the U.S. and China. That would come in later tranches. What this is that preliminary pact on agriculture, on some other things, sort of that pause in the trade deal. But the idea that that could be put into actual formal language and ratified, that could take off some pressure related to additional tariff hikes. It would signal that the trade war has kind of been capped, that it won't have further escalation. And so that's kind of what they're working on. The U.S. had some positive signs toward that. China said that it wanted to have the details on the table, wanted to have those signed, said there was some more negotiation to do. And the thing that you're seeing markets react to is that President Trump said today at the White House that those were going well, that China had started its agricultural buys, and that the talks were proceeding well. So that's where you're seeing some of the market moves in reaction to this news. There certainly has been some movement on happy talk. You know, as much as we might sit there and say that there's a difference between talk and substance, markets do move on talk, and they have today.
Indeed they have. Let's have a look at what else is making headlines across the globe. Sue Keenan of Bloomberg News brings you the first word headlines.
We're going to start with the elections in Canada. Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau looks set to retain power in what has been a very close election, but polls suggest he'll lose his parliamentary majority, and that would force him to rely on a left-leaning party to survive a second term. Trudeau's popularity has been hobbled by a series of scandals. If he loses the election, he'll become the only the fifth prime minister, I should say, in Canada's history to be ousted after just one term. To Israel now, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has failed in his bid to form a new coalition. That forces him to return the mandate to do so back to the country's president. President Rivlin now plans to pass that right to opposition leader and former military chief Benny Gantz, who is expected to face an equally difficult task. Two inconclusive elections this year have left Israel in a political deadlock. And to Indonesia, where the president Joko Widodo has asked both his key political rival and the founder of the country's biggest startup to join his revamped cabinet. Ministerial posts were reportedly offered to Prabowo Subianto, the president's defeated challenger in the last two elections, and to Nadiem Makarim, the 35-year-old co-founder of ride-hailing service Gojek. The full cabinet is due to be named on Wednesday. And Chilean President Sebastián Piñera is calling for dialogue to resolve days of violent anti-government protest. He says that he will meet political leaders tomorrow for talks on resolving the crisis. The United Nations has condemned the violence after protest clashes that have left at least 11 people dead. As you can see, police used tear gas and water cannons on Monday to break up violent demonstrations in the capital of Santiago. Global news 24 hours a day, on air and at TikTok, on Twitter, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Sue Keenan. This is Bloomberg.
All right, let's turn to India. It's going to be a busy day, particularly in the earnings space, but let's take a look at how the markets are likely to open. Agam Vakil is here to set you up for the day's trade and also what's happening in the futures and options space. Agam, we're returning after a bit of a break. Trading action starts in earnest today. How are we looking?
Well, a lot of things have happened over the course of, the long weekend. But, two stocks we're going to watch out for is Reliance Industries and Infosys. Of that, it clearly is going to be in focus considering they're the heavyweights. But for now, the SGX Nifty indicating marginal decline. It's not going to be about indices today as much as it's going to be about earnings and perhaps some news. We did see about 6 to 0.7% gain for the indices and an outperformance from the broader markets. The banking indices too did see about a gain, but banking index particularly specifically today will also be in focus on the back of Kotak Bank and Axis Bank, along with a whole host of other banks coming up with earnings. Of course, HDFC Bank also came out with earnings, and we will see the banking indices react to that. For now, the areas will not matter and will be only for one stock that we are going to watch out for, and that's going to be Infosys. So if we can have that, and there you have it. This is about 12% decline coming in there on the back of the whistleblower complaints and the letter written to the board as well as the USSEC, which is why we have seen that decline coming through. Of course, we're going to talk about Infosys, I'm sure, all day today, considering we are expecting a sharp reaction there. FIs didn't do too much on a net basis. DI is buying to the tune of 587 odd crores on a net basis. Moving on, when it comes to contributors, Reliance Industries, HDFC Bank, L&T advancing to a certain extent, or not too much to speak for when it comes to losers. But what about futures and options? As we move into this week, we are keeping an eye on the Nifty futures, which saw further short covering. The Nifty banking futures too, which will, I assume, see a lot of volatility, also saw far short covering, and where the open interest declined by as much as 9%. Moving on, we also have your open interest distribution matrix, and which really doesn't tell you too much considering we've seen open interest across a lot of these options. But for now, watching an 11,400 on the lower end. Of course, 11,500, 11,600 puts were the ones where we did see a lot of writing coming through. What about the India Volatility Index? That remained largely flattish, largely unchanged below the mark of 16. The Nifty put-call ratio coming through, that rose just a tad bit to around 1.4. And in terms of stocks, we're keeping an eye on Container Corp, Voltas, BPCL, Interglobe. All of them saw increase in open interest, and Mindtree, Yes Bank, and RBL. But that said, Alex, it is going to be a day of trade where Reliance Industries, HDFC Bank, and of course Infosys is going to be in focus.
And we're going to talk about each of these in more detail. Yeah. Thank you so much for that, Agam. For now, let's turn to an interesting comment made by State Bank of India head Rajneesh Kumar. In fact, he has pitched once again for a resolution plan to deal with stressed non-banking financial corporations. The country's largest lender, which is State Bank of India, of course, says that different stakeholders are approaching their respective regulators, making it difficult to reach common ground. Rajneesh Kumar was speaking to Vishwanath Nair on the sidelines of the IMF summit in Washington. Take a look.
So NBFC, there is no resolution framework as of now. And that is where some of the mutual funds, they have approached High Court. And only today I read in the newspaper, the some of the bondholders or the trustees on behalf of the bondholders, they have approached DRT. That is now, like some people have taken the judicial process. But what result it can give, that is what is to be seen. But in my view, it can be resolved. And the lenders have worked hard. There is steering committee, and at every stage, the other creditors, other than the banking and insurance, everybody has been kept informed. Right. So better way is a resolution rather than the DRT, but still, whatever is the legal right available to any class of creditor, they are free to get the legal redressal. I'm not saying that they can't do it, but it's still in the larger interest of the financial system and the NBFC system, and from the recovery point of view, a faster resolution under the RBI framework of 7th June, it is possible, but there are issues around regulation because we have multiplicity of regulators in the country. So that is where the challenge comes in.
With respect to the multiplicity of the regulators, there's a point you brought up, but has the banking system in any way done something to get these regulators to work together in some fashion?
No, we have pointed out that what are the issues, but ultimately it is the call which individual regulator has to take, or RBI as the main regulator now, banks and NBFC. And how that will be resolved at this stage, I am not in a position to comment.
Sure.
But there are issues around how to treat the dues to the mutual fund and other bondholders. NHB, in case of depositors, so that is governed by NHB.
Correct.
So that's what these are the challenges which are currently we as a bank or all the banks who are otherwise there is 100% consensus between the banks, insurance companies about the resolution plan, and that can be put to vote also very quickly. But before that is done now, because the matter has become sub judice, so these issues will need to be sorted out.
All right, we spoke about this. In fact, Agam pointed out that Infosys ADRs are trending significantly lower. It's going to be one of the big talking points over the course of the day. Agam is back to tell you exactly why he's saying that. Agam, it all boils down to that whistleblower complaint that talks about that that alleges essentially that the head, Mr. Parekh, essentially tweaked the books, shall we say.
Well, Alex, you know, historically, Infosys has been regarded as one of the cleanest companies in corporate India, and for whistleblower complaints to come in against the company, it certainly is a very serious issue. So from our understanding, the whistleblowers, that is the employees, and they call themselves ethical employees, had written to the board of Infosys as well as written to the US SEC suggesting unethical practices, especially in the finances, by CEO Salil Parekh. Among the many allegations made in that particular letter, which was written to the board, the first and foremost, right at the top, was not considering all the visa costs and thereby inflating operational profitability. There was also a reversal of $50 million worth of net profit, which was not reversed and which of course aided in profitability once again. There was forced revenue recognition when it comes to deals from Verizon, Intel, JV in Japan, as well as the Stater acquisition. And a lot of the revenue recognition was not as per accounting standards. The allegations also suggest that the CEO bypassed reviews and approvals, and the CEO and CFO had asked these employees to show more profits, raising the risk level as far as the treasury ops are concerned, and changing financial policies. These are just some of the main allegations made by the whistleblower, and they do suggest that they have this evidence not only in emails but also in voice recordings in many instances. Let's not forget that they have also accused the CEO of making personal comments against the board members in that very letter. What is the company's response? At this point in time, the company is only saying that this is a whistleblower's complaint and that has been placed in front with the audit committee as per company's practices and will be dealt with in accordance of company's whistleblower policy. We also spoke with KM Shaw, who is a board member. Of course, she's the founder of Biocon, but she's also a board member, and she was a part of the panel which appointed CEO Salil Parekh at the helm. And she also said the same thing, that we will follow due process and we will follow all the process according to the company's whistleblower policy. That said, for now, things are certainly looking dire, at least as far as the stock is concerned. That's reflected in the ADR, and we'll have to keep an eye on how things develop from here on.
Thanks so much for that, Agam. We'll stay with this story, of course, over the course of the day. Another point, of course, is the fact that there are so many earnings to talk about. Let's first talk about the earnings that have already come in. HDFC Bank's earnings met analyst estimates in the second quarter. Lower tax rates aided the bank's profitability. Asset quality remains stable on a sequential basis. However, the bank's NBFC arm, which is HDB Financial, saw some deterioration in its asset quality. Take a look.
HDFC Bank posted inline set of earnings for the second quarter. Their net interest income went up by about 15% and profit went up by about 27%. The profit was mainly aided by the lower tax rate that the bank had in this quarter and also aided by the other income, which jumped substantially by about 40% on a year-on-year basis. Other than that, the asset quality looked absolutely stable for them, with gross NPAs coming in at about 1.38% and net NPAs at about 0.42%. Deposits growth remains strong at about 22.6%, and even the advances growth that the management had already disclosed a couple of days back, that also came in at about 19.5%, looking steady for them this time around. However, there was some amount of pressure as far as margins are concerned, which came off by about 10 basis points on a sequential basis. One of the bank's subsidiaries, HDB Financial, also reported earnings, and there was some amount of pressure on the bottom line, with its profit coming in at about 213 crores, which was down by about 13.5%. Their loan book grew steadily by about 16 odd percent. Asset quality, however, was under slight pressure for HDB Financials, with gross NPAs coming in at about 3.4%, inching up from about 2.3% on a sequential basis. Net NPAs also went up, and the bank said in its press release that for HDB Financial, they've adopted certain best practices on the NPA recognition, and hence the inch up in the NPAs. But on an overall basis, the numbers looked absolutely in line and stable for HDFC Bank.
Right. The other big number to talk about, of course, is Reliance Industries, and it may have the country's largest refining unit, but clearly it missed the mark in the second quarter. It was the consumer and petrochemical businesses that saw the company through the second quarter. Somit Sarkar is here with all the details. Somit, what do you have for us?
Well, I'll start off with the refining segment, which reported a weak set of numbers, and this was mainly on the back of lower volumes and lower than expected gross refining margins. Volumes declined by nearly 5% compared to last quarter due to a planned shutdown, while the gross refining margins came in at close to $9.4 per barrel. Now, this is higher compared to last quarter because of a strong benchmark, that is the Singapore gross refining margins. However, Reliance GRM's premium to Singapore gross refining margin, now that declined to $2.9 per barrel, which is the lowest in the last 17 quarters. And this was because of a maintenance shutdown, lower production of gasoline and fuel oil, because Reliance generally produces more of diesel oil. Petrochemical reported in inline numbers, mainly aided by higher volumes. Revenue rose nearly 2.5%, while EBIT increased marginally by 1%. But this is despite the fact that the product spreads had contracted during the quarter. Also, the EBIT rise was after two consecutive quarters of decline. Now, volumes were up nearly 14% to 9.9 million metric tons, which was the highest ever, and this is what aided the petrochemical numbers in the second quarter of financial year 2020. The telecom business also reported an inline set of numbers on the back of strong subscriber additions. Revenues were up nearly 5%, while EBITDA increased 10% compared to last quarter. This was aided by 2.4 crore subscriber addition that Jio did during the quarter. However, the pace of subscriber addition has slowed down for Jio. This was the slowest in the last 7 quarters. Along with this, lower interconnect usage charges also aided the operational numbers. IUC dropped by nearly 23% compared to last quarter to 650 crore rupees in the second quarter. Retail numbers were strong and ahead of analyst estimates. Revenue growth slowed down to 27%, but Q2 is usually a lean season, and given the fact that there is an economic slowdown, these numbers are not bad for the retail segment. EBIT grew 64% compared to last year to close to 2,000 crore rupees, which is the highest ever EBIT number reported by the company. Now, this is on the back of double-digit same-store sales growth, store expansion plans, and operational efficiencies. Lastly, the company's debt increased to close to 2,92,000 crore rupees on the back of this. Its finance cost also increased to close to 5,450 crore rupees. Capital expenditure during the quarter, however, was lower at around 19,000 crore rupees, which is the lowest in the last 7 quarters, and this is in line with what the company had said earlier and should be taken positively, as the same will help the company to become a net debt-free company by financial year 2021.
Thanks so much for that, Somit. Let's turn now to the earnings that you have to watch out for in trade today. The first of the two banks reporting earnings today is Axis Bank. Deferred tax assets may have an impact on the lender's profitability. Shefali Malik is here to take you through what the street is pricing in for the lender.
For Axis Bank, we are expecting a net interest income figure of about 6,056 crore rupees for the second quarter. That will be a growth of about 15.8% on a YOY basis. Its profit is expected to come in at about 905 crores, a growth of about 15 odd percent. Now, in case of Axis Bank, the range of the estimates being put out by the analyst is extremely wide. Somebody is expecting as low as 10 crore rupees to come in this quarter as far as profit is concerned, and the highest estimate is that of 2,100 crore rupees, and this difference is mainly because of the DTA impact. So some analysts are building that to come in this particular quarter and some are not. So probably that's the reason for the wide range of profit estimates for Axis Bank. Other than that, the business momentum looks steady for them, with loan growth expected to come in at about 14% and deposit growth seen around 18 odd percent. And in the last quarter, that is the first quarter, the management had disclosed some 8 stressed accounts. So we'll watch out for what has happened to these 8 stressed accounts in this particular quarter. Margins are expected to remain stable at about 3.4%, and the fundraising that the bank did was towards the end of the second quarter. So the benefit of that will actually come in the second half of this financial year. So these are the broad metrics that we'll be looking forward to for Axis Bank.
All right, the second bank is Kotak Mahindra Bank. The asset quality of the bank is likely to remain stable for the September quarter, with no untoward surprises in terms of provisioning expected. Shefali Malik is going to take you through the analyst estimates there as well. Shefali.
For Kotak Mahindra Bank, we are expecting absolutely steady set of earnings to come in this time around. On a standalone basis, we are looking at the net interest income figure of about 3,284 crores. That will be a growth of about 22% on a YOY basis. And profit is expected to come in at about 1,710 crores, which will be a growth of about 50% on a YOY basis. Business momentum for them is expected to remain strong, with loan and deposit growth each of about 18% in this particular quarter. And we can expect stable operating performance as well, with margins also looking steady in this time around. So other income for them will be driven by healthy fee income growth. We've seen a very healthy figure come in for the HDFC Bank when it comes to the other income. So whether they've also had this kind of a performance in this particular quarter, it'll be interesting to see. Their CASA ratio is one of the best in the industries, in excess of about 50%. So that is likely to continue for them this time around as well. Asset quality as well, no pressure expected, and hence the provisioning is also expected to be stable, and we'll watch out for the asset quality specifically in the MSME segment. Performance of some of the other subsidiaries is also expected to be on the expected lines. So on a consolidated level, we are expecting an NII growth of about 12 odd percent in this quarter, and a PAT growth of about 35 odd percent as far as Kotak Mahindra Bank at a consolidated level is concerned.
Now, it's going to be a financial heavy day in earnings today, and Bajaj Finance is also part of the list. Shefali Malik is going to take you through those expectations as well. Shefali.
For Bajaj Finance, we are factoring in an NII growth of about 63% on a YOY basis at a consolidated level, and a profit growth of about 55 odd percent to about 1,434 odd crores in the second quarter at a consolidated level. Their AUM growth, they had already reported a couple of days back, a growth of about 38.25%. That had come off from levels of 40% plus that they've done in last 3 quarters. But nonetheless, 38% AUM growth is still a very strong number. Growth in mortgages will be one of the key monitorables for them this time around, and margins, however, will see a contraction of about 40 basis points to about 9.4%, but that will be in line with the seasonal trends. So that's one thing that we'll be looking forward to. The cost to income ratio is expected to improve by about 150 basis points on a YOY basis. Asset quality overall expected to remain stable. However, we'll be looking forward to trends in the LAP portfolio and also in the two-wheeler and three-wheeler businesses, and also some of the segments on which the management had decided to be cautious, which they informed in the first quarter. So we look forward to that as well, and we'll watch out for trends in fee income. Remember, fee income is a considerable, has been becoming a considerable portion of their overall earnings since last few quarters. So we look forward to that trend as well, and also traction in the cross-income franchisee. So that's what broadly we're looking forward to from Bajaj Finance when they report their earnings.
All right, now let's talk about the last company in the realm of earnings. Asian Paints may have remained resilient to slow down in the quarter gone by, although commentary on the demand outlook going forward is likely to be keenly watched. Yash Upadhyay is here to take you through some of those key factors. Yash, over to you.
Morning, Alex. So it is expected to be a largely stable quarter for Asian Paints. So as far as the headline numbers are concerned, revenues are seen growing by almost 12.5% on a year-on-year basis, coming in at over 5,200 crores for the company. EBITDA is seen higher by almost 30% to 1,021 crores, while margins are seen expanding by nearly 270 basis points to almost 19.6%. The net profit too is seen higher by as much as 37% to 677 crores for the quarter. Now, in terms of key factors to watch out for, the most important number for Asian Paints is the volume growth in the domestic decorative paint business, and that is where we have seen continued outperformance from the company, 6 consecutive quarters of double-digit volume growth. However, this time around, the analysts are expecting that number to be in the range of 8 to 10%, with some of the brokerages do highlighting that number could be slightly higher than that as well. As far as your margins are concerned, the raw material pricing situation has been very favorable for the company. Crude oil prices, they are down almost close to 10% over the previous quarter. Now, do keep in mind that crude oil prices, they do take a certain lag of a quarter in order to effectively play out in their earnings, but the lower crude oil prices, that is seen benefiting their margins in the quarter. The management commentary is the most important thing to watch out for. In the previous quarter, they did say that the macroeconomic situation does look difficult, and that the second half of the quarter is something that they would have to watch out very carefully. So an update with respect to the management commentary and the demand situation would be something that the street would be watching out for. Apart from that, the performance and outlook of its industrial paint business, it doesn't account for a large chunk of their overall revenues, but given how the slowdown in the automobile sector has been, it is a key sector to watch out for. And lastly, any market share updates with respect to the company and the performance in the several regions that it is present in would be something that the street would be eyeing out.
Thanks so much for that, Yash. Now, we've taken you through several stocks already that are likely to be at the center of action today. Soumit Sarkar is joining me back to tell you all about the stocks in news, apart from the ones that we've spoken about, of course. Soumit, what's on your list today?
Mainly earnings that we have. I'll start off with the Nifty companies first. Bharti Infratel, where the results were above estimates and the numbers were aided by higher exit charges and lower the expenses. Exit charges were close to 101 crore rupees in the second quarter, while the other expenses were down nearly 66% compared to last quarter. In the second quarter, the company also on a net basis added 159 tenancies, while the tower rental per operator per month dropped nearly 1% compared to last quarter, which was the first drop seen in the last 6 quarters. Ultratech Cement results were above estimates. Results were below estimates. Lower than expected volume growth impacted the top line performance. Domestic volumes were down nearly 1%, while the consolidated volumes were down also 1%. Volumes were weak despite the fact that there was a consolidation of the Century Cements and Ultratech Cement business. Standalone EBITDA per ton was close to 1,055 rupees per ton, which was below estimates of close to 1,150 to 1,200 rupees per ton. Shree Cement results were above estimates. Lower realization and freight costs surprised positively. Cement sales volume were up nearly 1.5% compared to last year, which is better than the industry trends. Now, the key negative surprise was a 66% drop in the power segment EBITDA. Avanti Feeds, a strong set of numbers reported by the company's revenue were up nearly 41%, EBITDA increased by 79%, while margins came in higher at 12.1%. Net profit of the company increased nearly 156% compared to last year. The lower cost and higher other income aided the numbers. Revenues were aided by strong performance in the shrimp feed business, where the EBIT margin literally doubled compared to last year. Also, the company's balance sheet improved as the net cash position improved to 967 crore rupees from 710 crore rupees at the end of financial year 2019. Ambuja Cements results were below estimates on the back of weaker volume growth. Volume was down nearly 4% compared to a drop of 2% that we had seen for ACC. Cement sales volume were impacted by floods, prolonged monsoons and slowdown seen in the Indian economy. L&T Technology Services results were in line with analyst estimates, but the management has cut the guidance. Now they have cut lowered dollar revenue guidance for financial year 2020 to 10% versus 12 to 4%. That is what the management had given earlier. Management has also cited that the third quarter will be a soft quarter for revenue growth, and they're expecting a bounce back from the fourth quarter of financial year 2020. Oberoi Realty, a weak set of numbers. Revenues were down nearly 17%. Net profit fell by nearly 35%. EBITDA was down nearly 28%. Slowdown in real estate sector has impacted the sales of the company because they have sold only 58 units in the second quarter as compared to 115 units sold last year. However, the company's rental assets continue to perform well with stable occupancy levels. Lastly, a couple of stocks other than the earnings. Tata Steel, where the Europe unit has planned to cut down costs by nearly 830 million euros, while secondly HG Infra, where they have received an EPC order worth nearly 951 crore rupees from Adani Road Transport.
Thanks so much for that, Somit. In politics, the BJP is seen consolidating its power in the two states where assembly elections were held yesterday. And there are several key talking points therein. Kaushik Vaidya takes you through all of them.
The first assembly election after the BJP's 2019 Lok Sabha landslide has come to a close, and all major exit polls are indicating that the National Democratic Alliance will retain power in Maharashtra and the BJP will in Haryana. In both states, the tallies are being projected either at the same level or higher than the 2014 mandate. Let's take you through some of those. In Maharashtra first, at the alliance level, you're seeing at the lower end that India Today Axis My India poll projects about 181 seats. That's roughly where things stood at the end of the 2014 election, where the BJP and the Shiv Sena fought separately and then came together. In the other 3-4 polls, you're seeing that 200 number being crossed as projected, giving you a poll of polls number of 215. If you take that as a formation going into an election together, this would be the strongest mandate for a government since the early 70s in Maharashtra. For 40 years, you've not seen, if these numbers play out, a mandate being given to a party or an alliance that's coming into an election together. How's that happening? The Congress and the NCP together in the 2014 tally were about at 80. Only one poll is showing them retain anything close to that. In 3 of them, you're seeing that number fall. Let's break that down party by party for you. The BJP in 2 of these polls, in one poll, that's the Times Now poll, you're seeing the BJP being pegged at a number that's over the halfway mark of 144. Were that to happen, its alliance partner right now, the Shiv Sena, the BJP doesn't necessarily need the party to be in that government because it might have crossed that halfway mark if that number plays out. In 2 others, that's the Republic Jan Ki Baat poll and the News 18 Ipsos poll, you're seeing that number being very close to that 144 mark. Would there be a situation where the BJP says we don't need the Shiv Sena, we hop on and get in some others in and rule and run Maharashtra completely on our terms without a major alliance partner? There's only one poll that's projecting the need for the Shiv Sena for the BJP in Maharashtra. Let's move over to Haryana. Remember, in Haryana elections till 2009, the BJP was a very marginal player. So from there to the 47 seats it got in 2014 to the projections right now, in 3 polls the BJP is being projected to cross a tally of 70 out of 90. This would be a remarkable move for a party that's barely used to cross 10 seats in Haryana. There's one poll that's pegging it at 57, and 69 is the poll of polls tally you're seeing for Manohar Lal Khattar, a chief minister who's finished 5 years after a term that began with nobody thinking that's who would be picked. And then through the first year, there were missteps, which after that he was able to consolidate as the Congress broke into factions. The INLD, which had run previous government in the state, split as the ruling part. The party that runs, the family that runs that party split as well. So Mr. Khattar has been able to enjoy a severely factionalized opposition to improve on his 2014 tally and run to a point that the BJP has never seen before in the state of Haryana. These are projected numbers, remember. The actual results of the first state assembly election after this year's Lok Sabha election will come in 8 a.m. onwards on Thursday. So keep watching BloombergQuint and read the updates that we get you on Thursday morning through Thursday afternoon.
All right. Meanwhile, Nobel laureate Abhijit Banerjee, who had advised the Congress party on its Nyay scheme, says he wouldn't recommend implementing it in its current form. Speaking to the Quint, Banerjee says that his role was limited to the sharing of some data with the Congress.
मेरा भूमिका खास तौर से यही था कि उन्होंने काफ़ी इसके डिज़ाइन में कई नंबर्स की ज़रूरत था और मुझसे पूछा गया था कि आपको पता है कि ये 20% अब बॉटम 20% इसका मैक्सिमम इनकम कितना होगा और इनमें इनके एवरेज इनकम कितना है, इस तरह के कई चीज़ें हमसे पूछा गया था और मैंने वो डेटा निकाल के दे दिया। ख़ास इसके फाइनल डिज़ाइन में मुझसे नहीं पूछा गया, अपने आप वे लोग तय किया।
अगर मौजूदा मोदी सरकार आपकी राय मांगे कि इससे कैसे निपटा जाए और इस मंदी से कैसे निकला जाए, तो आपका क्या मशवरा रहेगा, क्या एडवाइस रहेगी?
अगर मैंने पहले तो थोड़ा सा और चर्चा करूँगा, क्योंकि मेरे यही चिंता है कि यहाँ डिमांड की कमी है, लेकिन अगर इस पे थोड़ा सा चर्चा भी करना चाहिए। अगर डिमांड की कमी है तो गरीबों के पास और पैसा पहुंचना चाहिए कि पीएम किसान में 6,000 की जगह 12,000 दिया जा सकता, ऐसा कुछ करना चाहिए।
न्याय किस्म की स्कीम चल जाएगी आपके हिसाब से?
न्याय के किस्म की न्याय के एक बहुत बड़ी प्रॉब्लम थी कि वो बॉटम 20% को वे लोग एक फिक्स्ड अमाउंट दे रहे थे, तो इसके वजह से जो 19% में है वो शायद 39% में पहुंच जाएगा और बहुत लोग इस पे नाराज होने का संभावना था। तो मेरे ख्याल से अगर वे लोग ये अभी पावर में आए थे तो वो लोग इस स्कीम को थोड़ा सा बदलना शायद जरूरी होता,
तो प्रोग्रेसिव स्केल होता था,
कुछ ऐसा करना पड़ता। वो स्कीम जैसा था वो अभी मेरे ख्याल से इम्प्लीमेंटेबल नहीं था।
All right, that's all that we have for you in this edition of All You Need to Know, but clearly there's several talking points, not least of which is the big news update on Infosys. So do stay tuned. There's a lot more coming up on BloombergQuint.